Okay, welcome to part 2 of Unit 2, Liberal and National Revolutions, part 2, the Enlightenment. This video goes along with pages 2 through 4 in the packet, which covers the Enlightenment. Okay, so the Enlightenment is a period of great intellectual change. If we're thinking in terms of spice, the Enlightenment is cultural change, things related to philosophy, values, beliefs. That's cultural change. And the Enlightenment is a period of great change in how people thought that happens from the late 1700s through the late 1800s, so the 18th and 19th centuries. Okay, a lot of the Enlightenment thought is going to come out of Europe, but those ideas are going to rapidly start spreading around the world. And this time is called the Enlightenment because the thinkers of this time period literally thought they were turning on the lights to the rest, turning on lights to how we thought. So this is at its core a change in culture, the way we think. But it is going to spread through society, politics, and economics rapidly, almost from the beginning. Okay. So the Enlightenment actually comes out of the scientific revolution. Enlightenment philosophers look at the ideas of Isaac Newton and the ideas of Nicholas Copernicus and others and are like, you know what? If they can come up with rules for the natural world, we should be able to take that same process. Okay, the idea of reason and rational thought and the scientific method and extend that out to all parts of life. So, scientific change, which is either interactions with the environment or culture, depending on specifically what kinds of change, lead to the cultural, political, economic, and social changes of the Enlightenment. Because again, they thought that you could take that scientific method and apply it to all aspects of life. They also take their key or take a cue from the Glorious Revolution in Britain, which is a political revolution. They're pretty literally going to overthrow one king and replace them with technically a king and queen who ruled jointly. But there's no blood in this revolution. That's why one of the reasons why they call it glorious. It is a peaceful revolution. And what it does is it sets up a constitutional monarchy in Britain. And a constitutional monarchy is where the king or queen has to share power with an elected parliament. And this comes right out of the ideas of one of the more famous Enlightenment philosophers, John Locke, and his idea of social contract. The idea that government is an agreement between the rulers and the people, and that really the job of the government is to protect people's rights. Because John Locke, like all other philosophers of the time, or most other philosophers of the time, believed that people had natural rights, that everybody, just by sheer force of being born, has the rights to life, liberty, and property. There are, of course, contradictions in this. Okay, the most obvious of them being slavery. John Locke, one of our greatest Enlightenment philosophers, also fully acknowledges that he makes most of his fortune either directly or indirectly through the slave trade and doesn't really have too much of a problem with it. Okay, he finds ways to rationalize slavery. The Enlightenment is not perfect, particularly when it comes to social change. Racial and gender equality is going to remain a problem. Slowly, though, human rights and equality will take more of a forefront. You will start to see, as the Enlightenment moves on, feminist philosophers like Mary Wollstonecraft, who is not entirely arguing for gender equality, but she is absolutely arguing that women have as much rights to education and property as men do. And so we have some moves towards gender equality, and you do slowly start to see people moving away from the idea that slavery, while maybe, kind of quote unquote icky, was justifiable because of the economic benefits. Right? You also see dramatic economic changes coming out of the Enlightenment. Particularly, you have in the early years of the Enlightenment, Scottish economist Adam Smith publishes his book, The Wealth of Nations, which broadly says that society evolves, it changes over time, and that we are he thought, at the highest point in the late 1700s, where we were basing our society around business and trade, and the idea of working for profits. Okay, we will get much deeper into capitalism in future units. In this unit, we're mostly going to focus on political and social change, but the economics does come up periodically. Okay. So the Enlightenment gave people a new way to see the world. And while some people saw the problems in the Enlightenment, social inequality and cultural contradictions, most of the main leaders and thinkers of the Enlightenment are rich white men or middle class white men, depending, primarily from Europe and later on from America. And while they definitely want change, they want small change that helps them, not big dramatic change that helps everybody. Okay, but particularly on the view side of culture and society, there are more radical voices. Oladu Equianu, who was captured into slavery out of modern day Nigeria and brought to the Americas, will eventually go on to write his autobiography and become an outspoken abolitionist. Olympe de Gouges is a French abolitionist and feminist who will speak against both slavery and the way women are left out of the French Revolution. We see voices coming out of the Americas like Jose Antonio Alzate, who becomes an early advocate for indigenous American rights. So the struggle of the Enlightenment, it goes back and forth. There are, particularly if you are a white man, a lot of advances. If you are a white woman, you will see some advance over this time period. And depending on where you live, if you are a person of color, maybe things got better, maybe it didn't. But these Enlightenment ideas continue through today. If you are protesting today, if you are speaking out today, you are carrying on the legacy of the Enlightenment. And it is a squiggly line that runs all over the place, not a direct line, but ultimately, it is what's bringing more freedom and human rights into the conversation as early as 1750.